All right, let's get going here. How is everybody? My name is Saxon Baum, and I'm the VP of Investor Relations here at Florida Funders. Today, we're really excited. I have Lauren Munchik, who's the Director of Partner Engagement at Carve Communications. Carve is a public relations and communications firm based in South Florida. They really have a specialty in working with venture capital-based companies and early-stage technology companies. They've been an amazing partner of Florida Funders for the last 6 months or so. So we're so excited to have Lauren. I also have Candace Resvanian, who is the Director of Founder Success at Florida Funders, on the line as well. And she's going to be able to ask some questions and get involved when need be. So we're going to get started here. I'm going to kick it over to Lauren. He's going to talk here for the first 15 to 20 minutes, and then we can open it up to questions. All the questions can be asked directly through the Q&A function, and then I will ask them aloud so that Lauren has the ability to answer. Lauren, it's all you.
Thanks so much, Saxon. I appreciate the intro, and good to have everybody here on the call. Certainly unique times that we're living in right now, and whatever we can do to kind of help out, with any marketing questions, any communications questions. We are here certainly for the Florida Funders, portfolio companies, and any friends of Florida Funders. This new working remotely is certainly, and I'll preface the conversation by saying everything is so fluid. When Saxon asked me to join in on this webinar last week, I think things have changed even dramatically from then, where we thought maybe April 15th would be a day that we could point to as a mile marker and a day that maybe we could start to see some normalcy return again. And it seems like that's kind of sliding back to early to mid-May, certainly for us down here in South Florida at least. Concerns about, health of friends and family, job security, the economy. These are all things that are really crucially important and weighing on everybody's mind right now. So I think everything that we do needs to be kind of through that filter of understanding. And certainly when we're talking about messaging and PR and how we're communicating via the media, how we're communicating on our owned platforms, whether it's our website, our social channels, email blasts, all of that needs to be through a cautious filter and really understanding, how it's being received on the other side of the line. Just taking through a little bit, I'm not sure exactly, the knowledge base of everybody who's on this webinar of their PR efforts to date. From Carve's perspective and just a little bit of PR 101 that we always look to, and certainly when we're looking to startups that are determining what their messaging is going to look like, what PR can do for them. There's a few I would say kind of lessons or bullets that we kind of try to run through with startups to make sure everybody is on the same page. And it's a pretty simple kind of lesson plan, if you will. But at the same time, it's important for everybody to kind of come to the table having thought about these things a little bit. And the first one is really understanding about a solid narrative for your brand or your product, that it's really used across the organization, meaning that there's clear and concise answers to what you are, why customers should choose you, how your product or service works, and who is the team behind that organization. And that messaging matrix, if you will, is something that we do with all of our clients. In fact, we've been working with Saxon and Candace and the team in terms of determining what that looks like for Florida Funders. And it's something that's absolutely crucially important when you're determining a PR and marketing strategy, to make sure everybody is singing from the same songbook. I mean, that's really what we use on a day-to-day basis in reaching out to the media. That pitch, that's something that you would use as a founder talking to investors, potential investors, current investors. That's something that your sales team would use in talking to prospective clients and current clients. So it's having that solid narrative that everybody, is on board with, everybody is represented at that table, is crucially important. When we're determining the talking points of how you're reaching out to the media, how you're reaching out to your different audiences, go beyond what just the features are of your product and service, and really focus on both the problem that it's solving and the expertise that you possess when you're discussing how to solve that problem. And that goes beyond someone just buying your product or service. They really are buying the team. So really understanding how, you know, your product or service turns on that light bulb that solves that problem is crucially important. Making sure that for any just news announcement, whether that's investment related, funding related, seed related, or hire related, ensure that or maybe it's an update to your product or something like that, ensure that value proposition is always front and center, making sure that, you know, the media and any of the audiences understand exactly the why behind any news announcements. Understanding who the spokesperson will be, preparing them and media training them properly so that when they are talking to the media, they do represent your product or service, your brand, as positively as possible, so that you know, the face of your brand is out there in a really interesting and creative way. And then set aside, you know, the last kind of thing, and a little bit maybe that talks about what our involvement is, set aside some budget to engage a PR firm or a PR consultant professional to help you distribute the news to the right media audiences. Thinking that just a release on a newswire is going to result in coverage, reaching out to some generic email addresses and kind of crossing your fingers that TechCrunch or VentureBeat is going to pick it up is maybe a little too optimistic. So having somebody that's been in the wars before that can help guide is a good way to get started. A little bit of an overview of what we're seeing from a PR and media perspective right now. We are certainly seeing an interesting shift in media consumption. Maybe a little bit of a return to how things used to be back in the day. Traditional media TV spiking usage, whether that's on broadcast and traditional mainline TV or streaming services. Video game usage big up. Web traffic, people consuming news and online shopping, way up. We are seeing a little bit of an interesting downturn in podcast support. People aren't commuting right now, so a little bit less time for longer form audio only stuff. People are taking some walks, people are getting out there a little bit, but I think they're using it mostly to connect with family and be in a situation that they're not normally in on a day-to-day basis. So a little bit less of that podcast consumption. In terms of Amazon sales, obviously way up. I can just speak to our own household. I would say that it's Christmas and multiple birthdays of Amazon spending wrapped up in one, trying to keep our 4-year-old with activities to do, trying to make sure that we've got all the essentials that we need here in the house, shopping with Instacart, Amazon Fresh. Obviously, that's something that we're doing on a fairly regular basis here to make sure that we're staying as safe and sound as possible. Interestingly, we're seeing for some of our product clients, crowdfunding traffic and backers and new campaigns on Kickstarter and Indiegogo are going really well for some clients, both from a media perspective, media covering crowdfunding that maybe they were a little reticent to cover. Media is just looking right now out there for, you know, anything that is going to increase productivity. So making sure that you know, those crowdfunding projects are aptly timed right now. If it's something that was in the pipeline that you were thinking about in the past, that's something that we're seeing a lot of clients jump into. Certainly social media is an integral part of everyday life. You know, connection to the friends and family, you know, where we're not getting that human interaction personally, we're getting it through social media, and then staying informed, what's the latest that's going on, both in and around me, nationally, globally. It's obviously a big deal, and it's something that, you know, as you are talking to your audiences that you need to talk to on a daily basis, making sure that you're staying on top of that, again, with the right filter and right understanding of the language that needs to be used. And that kind of leads us into something that, you know, at Carve Communications, it's been now, 2.5 weeks where we've been working from home, and that's something that's new for us, because we're pretty used to the touch and feel of being with all of our colleagues. So Slack and team communications and understanding workflow platforms that really help in our team productivity. Obviously, Zoom, what this webinar is being hosted on, is a huge thing, and we're on that all day long. But maybe doing a deep dive on some other options that are out there, talking to colleagues or friends, other founders and people in the VC world, what they're using to stay productive, and trying that out with a couple team members, whether that's on a company-wide basis or even maybe just one-to-one, and seeing what the value could be for you guys. Rethinking, taking another track here of being productive is looking at your overall marketing strategy, using this downtime productively to kind of see what's been working over the last year. When we're in that kind of go, go, go mentality, maybe that there is some positive, benefit that can come out of it, a little bit of a glasses half full way to look at this. And it gives you a little bit of time from home when you're not homeschooling your kids or trying to stay connected to your team, to have a little bit of time to look at what's worked and what hasn't worked. Maybe not overreacting, but being smarter with the way that you've been deploying funds. Certainly right now, paid ads still have a place in the mix. We probably toned down a little bit of the selling language there, making sure that we're staying on point. But being smarter about how we're doing things, evaluating platforms for the connections, and what are what are you seeing consumers using most in these crisis times? And then obviously, when we get this bounce that's going to come, hopefully sooner rather than later, let's plan for the future. What's going to happen after we get through this, and how do we adjust and optimize, taking some of this learning, from the last few months into account, and really being smarter moving into the future. The ways to better serve our customers are going to be the way that we're really going to be able to see some positive benefits and see some rewards on the back end. From a media perspective, getting in front of the conversation in a really relatable, valuable way, monitoring your social media for deepening connections with customers or people that are connected with your business, via LinkedIn, via Insta, via Facebook. We've seen a few different over the, I guess you can kind of break them down into 7 to 10 day kind of chunks. At first, it was an email to your customers. Hey, we're aware of this situation. We're evaluating the situation. We might be closing a retail store down. We might be making some pivots here. And there was a little bit of a, hey, this is what, our company, thinks about what's going on in the world and how we're aligning with our customers. And you probably, had an inbox full of, the Lululemons and the Patagonias of the world, really trying to get out in front of this a little bit. Then, we saw the next chunk is responding to the crisis with, maybe some beneficial pivots and action, trying to get the brand out in front. And that's, Dyson maybe pivoting from fans to designing ventilators and producing ventilators, or Budweiser and LVMH making hand sanitizer, and Fanatics using baseball uniforms as medical gowns. Or even, on a more myopic level, local gyms or trainers providing their services online, something that they had never done in the past, because obviously, they're trying to get you into their studios. But, how we're connecting with customers, how we're putting our brand out there, as forward thinking as possible. Philanthropic efforts, providing meals to kids and first responders. How we can, deploy product or the resources and personnel to be smart. Crocs donating shoes to healthcare workers. I mean, there's a lot of ways to, kind of think about it from different perspectives, and how we can help and pitch in on an everyday basis. And I think that the next pivot, and probably the most important thing that we're working on with our clients right now, is creating a deeper connection with customers. We have that time now. There is, that media consumption. There is that ability to connect with customers and partners that are all working from home now. How do we deepen that connection? Something that we're trying right now, obviously, webinars and content creation, creating online relationships, maybe on new platforms. But really creating that value and deepening that relationship, I think that's going to be another way to really help making sure we're ahead of the bounce. I think, the media is hungry for some of these stories that are out there about being smart, about being productive. Certainly the tech crunches and the Mashables in the world, we've been successful in getting some of our clients there, and on local media that's out looking for stories about ways that corporations are being smarter and being a friend of the community. All of these things are what we're doing on a daily basis for our clients. And and another thing that we're seeing a little bit right now from a large corporation perspective is how our executives kind of bumping that personal brand, that corporate brand, by taking a little bit of a hit, whether that's a salary hit, whether that's creating funds for their employees that we saw with Comcast in the last 24 hours. How are corporations responding to their employees to make sure that everybody is going to be safe and sound coming out of it with a job, with health insurance, and trying to alleviate some of those fears and being a good kind of corporate citizen in that crazy kind of unique times that we're living in right now. And that's, from a PR perspective, that's kind of, we're, a little bit of a 360 on what we've been doing on a daily basis for our clients. I'm happy to take some more questions, or Saxon or Candace, if you have any more questions to jump in with, some of the PR things that we're thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Lauren, for giving us the 101 and also what you guys are seeing on the streets. It's very, very good to hear it from a professional. And, I think that Candace and I at Florida Funders are seeing a lot of this, but from your perspective, it's really great to hear. So we're going to open it up for questions now. I have a few that have already been written. The first one is, with startups reducing spend to decrease their burn, what creative, cost-effective PR and marketing approaches would you recommend that are budget-friendly?
I think that, first of all, it's a great question, and it's something that, is a concern with any, kind of anybody in the startup world, but it's true with larger corporations as well. I mean, everybody's kind of taking a haircut on marketing spend right now and wondering how to spend it wisely, how to deploy it wisely. And I think that in terms of creative ways, I would go back to, philanthropy, how you're connecting, how you're being a helper, how you're being a good corporate citizen, making sure that it's on message so that it doesn't feel disconnected. I think that's the largest thing, brainstorming ideas that really speak to your brand messaging. So giving examples, I mean, I talked a little bit about, some of the pivoting that the larger brands were doing. I don't think that you need to change what your product line is, certainly not for a startup. That's not really applicable to you, but making sure that you're offering products or services that really are contributing and adding value to the greater good. Something that, we're trying to do, again, is webinars like this, providing a little bit of insight, but also, brainstorming. We're happy to contribute our expertise on a one-on-one level to startups, like yourselves, and, maybe throw some ideas around that, are coming in with, kind of a fresh canvas perspective, and seeing, what your messaging is currently right now and how to make sure you're contributing to a greater conversation.
Awesome. Lauren, sort of going off of that question about the pivot, there are some companies that we will probably have in our portfolio and across the world that are going to have to pivot to try to get through this time. So one question that we have is, if you have to make a pivot during this time, how do you craft your message around that? Is it sent to your community of customers? Do you recommend that that message is delivered via email, webinar? Sort of talk about what that would look like if you did have to pivot.
Well, I think making sure everybody is on board, in-house first. So again, just like, the messaging matrix that you're doing from an overall brand perspective, making sure that that pivot is completely aligned. You're having everybody at the table giving their input into it. So not just from a founder perspective, but, from a sales perspective, from an operations perspective, making sure everybody has a voice in that, so that you can represent and make sure all audiences are getting that straight messaging is crucially important. When you are making that that pivot, I mean, depending on, obviously, we've got a pretty broad spectrum of sectors represented through the portfolio companies here, so it's hard to say unilaterally between B2C or B2C or B2B, but again, operating with that real authentic value adding process. Certainly from an investor perspective, they're going to want to know that you're looking at this from both a short, medium, and long-term perspective on where things are heading. And then from a customer perspective, making sure that maybe they get a little bit of input into it, maybe that you're taking a little bit of the customer perspective into that pivot as well. And I think again, creating that deepening connection to customers right now, the more personal you can make that messaging, whether that I feel like email is probably not the right forum for it, depending on how many customers you have, obviously, but the more personal you can create that messaging, the better right now. And I think that everybody appreciates a more personal message. Everybody appreciates that you're thinking about things from the receiving perspective. And the companies that are able to do that and create that authentic, deep relationship with their customers are the ones that are going to win, whether they have to pivot or not.
Hey, Lauren, this is Candace. You mentioned something just as you were answering that. It was really insightful. Thank you. You mentioned a messaging matrix. If anyone doesn't know what that is, can you expound a little bit upon what a messaging matrix is? And if a company doesn't have that defined yet within their organization, what are maybe some resources they can point to find advice on how to create that, especially during this time if they don't already have it crafted? And then we have a question too from an attendee that I'll follow up with.
Sure. So messaging matrix, is really about the what, why, how, and who of a brand. So it's about kind of putting, again, everybody at a table doing a half day, or really blocking out some time so that everybody has a chance to give some input into it. And really, whether that's led by, a PR team like us, whether that's led by somebody in operations or HR that's able to kind of curate the messaging there. It's about putting out, some facts about the company, some proof points behind that, so that each of the who, what, why, and how are backed up by a solid messaging, and the distillation of all of that becomes that elevator pitch, not only that you're using for investors and customers, but that from a PR and marketing perspective is kind of the playbook that your marketing team is working with as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. We have a question from Daniel. He said, would you look to capitalize on the current market distraction to leverage wider press distribution for positive company and product announcements? Or would you advise waiting for a recovery to leverage the upswing?
No, I mean, I would go with the first. I mean, there's certainly so much opportunity, and I talked just a little bit about, increased media consumption. I think that there's so much opportunity right now. And I hate to sound like, one of these guys on CNBC that's just saying, buy, buy, buy. This isn't about, putting money back into the market necessarily. This is about creating that deeper relationship with your customers. And there's that opportunity to really have a real positive benefit and really get your company out in front and your brand out in front of the conversation, making sure you're staying top of mind and not going dark during this time. I think that there's a real opening in everybody's mind, and maybe a shuffling of what brands are going to be on the other side, that the more that you can get out in front of it, the more that you can create that positive sentiment, the more that you're staying top of mind, both in the community and with customers, the bigger winner I think you're going to be on the other side.
Lauren, to follow up on that question, I mean, do you see this as the type of media, what type of media, if positive, should people be sharing? I mean, should it be everything from sales all the way down to new products, or should it be things that are COVID related? What's your sort of take on that?
I think that there's a mix in there. I think that, the reaction to just sales, and I think because so many people are concerned about the current marketplace, the current economy, I think going out there, even if you had a fantastic Q1 and you want to shout it from the rooftops, I think all of that should be looked at from the receiving perspective. And I think that, that filter needs to be provided on everything. I don't think you need to go out there and be like, hey, we're now a COVID related company or anything, unless, that's an accurate statement. But at the same time, I think that, being a good corporate citizen, putting yourself, or putting the brand into a really positive light will be received. And whether that, again, is through philanthropic efforts, whether that's in how you're reacting to your employees and keeping your entire staff on and not furloughing or firing anybody, whether that's about donating product or, figuring out a new platform to get, something good to first responders or to doctors, or doing, creating PPE and masks, with, employees that maybe aren't working right now, or maybe they're knitting masks, or, whatever it is. I think that there's room in there for both a corporate message, like there is, most of the time, but I think right now, even more so, a corporate message and a corporate citizen message at the same time. And those tracks run parallel in creating an overall, positive brand image.
Great. I have a question about social media. So as we see social media usage spiking, what do you suggest startups do on social to keep their customers and community engaged? For example, do you think that the go live on social media to create video content is smart? Sort of just talk a little bit about social media usage and what you think could be very positive during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think that any kind of, we have been, on board with, brands creating content and connecting with their consumers for a long time. But I think that even now it's even more kind of in your face and crucial to keep that connection going and go even further to creating a deeper relationship. So that communication, in a webinar format, in an Instagram live format, in a Facebook live format, where you're connecting, where there's a two-way conversation, where you're providing a platform for hearing your customers' concerns or getting consumer feedback, or whatever you can kind of put out there in the world about what you guys are up to, I think is beneficial. I think, again, even more so now when media consumption is up, social media consumption is up. I think this is the real opportunity to, have some, glasses half full, have some positive benefit of a really unbelievable, unique situation.
Awesome. So do we have any more questions from attendees? Candace, do you have anything else that you want to ask?
Not super on trend with what we've been talking about, but I think just as a closing, it'd be interesting, Lauren, what are maybe some of your favorite educational podcasts or blogs or reading resources that you recommend that you kind of keep in tune with that maybe you could suggest others subscribe to learn and benefit from during this time?
Sure. Well, when we're not using Khan Academy for our kid, then and trying to stay off Twitter. I think for me right now, and a little bit of sanity is being much more organized with my social media usage, creating Twitter lists so that when I want to find out about what's going on locally or nationally, I want to stay into the political conversation. I've got a list for each of those things, and maybe a sports list or maybe a technology and startup list as well. I took the time here being at home to get a lot more organized with my Twitter usage, so that helps me kind of save a few brain cells when I don't want to dive too deep into the Twitter back and forth. I'm able to be much more structured with that. Certainly making sure that connecting with friends and family is important. In terms of where I'm looking for information, I think, the tech crunches and the venture beats of the world, those are things that, I always turn to on a daily basis. Following writers from each of those on Twitter or on Instagram, on Facebook, is something that, I've been able to do a little bit more over the last couple weeks. But, at the same time, it's in kind of more snackable. And that's why, I go back to Twitter a couple of times here, because it's a little bit more snackable I get the information and kind of jump out a little bit more. Certainly, LinkedIn for staying connected with, what colleagues and customers are doing is even more crucially important, just like staying connected with family on Instagram or Facebook might be.
Perfect. Well, first off, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Secondly, Lauren, thank you so much. If anybody is interested in following up with Lauren, his email is lauren@carvecomms.com, LORIN @carve, CARV, comms, COMMS.com. And we're going to send this out via email as well. So keep your eyes open for an email from Candace. Once again, Lauren, thank you so much. Very insightful. And we really appreciate everybody's time today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on it. And, please be in touch if we can help you out. We're happy to do a little consult on what's going on. Happy to brainstorm some ideas maybe with you. The reason, that we're staying so busy right now is just trying to be creative with our clients. And that goes for the Florida Funders guys, as well as any friends of Florida Funders.
Great. Well, everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.